Good morning, everyone. I'm Susan Demas, the executive editor here at Lincoln Square, and welcome to the weekly assignment, where executive producer Sam Osterhout and I talk with you about what's coming up on Lincoln Square this week, the latest headlines, and what we can all do to fight back against authoritarianism. Hey, Sam, how's it going?
Oh, it's great. My hot water heater exploded last night. I've got a sick kid. It is very rarely do I wake up and think, man, I really want to talk about the Voting Rights Act and how our democracy is being destroyed. But today it feels like a respite from my basement.
You kind of expect those kinds of emergencies in the winter, but this feels like the winter that's never quite let go. I mean, we've had here in Michigan, 40-degree days going into May.
Oh,
It just kind of sucks.
it's a gut punch and everyone's getting sick. It is like, yeah, we're all just wallowing in the water in my basement at this point, democratically and in every way I can imagine. How was your weekend?
I think we're all taking on water right now, especially the Voting Rights Act. I mean,
Yeah.
that was such a gut punch from SCOTUS. I know, we've been talking with some of the top legal minds. They've been warning about this for a year. We knew it was coming, but just to see Sam Alito's opinion in black and white, with him just saying, yeah, we don't need this pesky Voting Rights Act. Who needs African American representation anymore? And here's a nice little bow-wrapped present for the Republicans going into the midterms. I mean, Sam, I know you've been talking with so many experts about this. What are your thoughts at this point?
I think there are a couple of big stories here, and when we bring our guest in, he's been talking a lot about this very eloquently, and I want to talk to Sawyer Hackett about it as well. But I think there are a couple of big stories here, and they kind of have different tentacles, I think, in our society, our culture, our politics. The first, of course, is that, this will limit Black representation. In other words, Black populations will have less access to power, less access to their chosen representative, less access to democracy than they had before. And look, it's not like they had a ton before, right? White people have been limiting their access, well, forever. I mean, it's not a thing that has ever really let up. We had to create the Voting Rights Act to solve a particular problem. And Alito's take is that the problem has been fixed, right? And therefore, we don't need it anymore. And it's bullshit. And it makes me enraged. I think another sort of tentacle of this is that the policy has become that you may not use race in service of uplifting a disfavored class, right? You can't use race to lift people up, but you can use race to hunt them down, right? And
Right, the Kavanaugh rule, which was on the shadow docket last fall and has allowed ICE to blatantly racially profile people in their deportation agenda.
Exactly. And so I think that, it's, disenfranchising, obviously, but in more ways than just one. It removes faith from the system. And when you lose faith or hope, then you stop trying to partake. And when you stop trying to partake, then the white dudes win.
Yeah. I mean, I think regardless of what your politics are, it's pretty disheartening to see map draws where, in certain states, there are no Democratic seats or there are no Republican seats. I mean, this is just raw power at its finest. Yes. And this is not about representing the people. This is just politics as a blood sport. This is the end of our multiracial democracy in many ways that went into effect only in 1965 with the Voting Rights Act. Because now at this point, you have states that can draw these absolutely ridiculous maps. And it's not just Republicans who are going to do this. Democrats are going to have to fight fire with fire.
Yes.
But the people are the big losers in all of this because, you know, if you're in a state like Tennessee and suddenly there are no Democratic states, there are no Democratic seats on that map, and yet 40 to 45% of the population is Democrat, that's insane. You know, that's not a democracy by any stretch of the imagination. And that's something that we got to grapple with. I do want to take just a moment before we bring in Sawyer, because there was some seismically big news in addition to what SCOTUS did. Over at the conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, they dealt the biggest blow to abortion rights since 2022, when the Dobbs decision came down from SCOTUS, striking down Roe v. Wade after 49 years. Most abortions in this country are medication abortion. Many people seek abortion care through telemedicine because if you've seen any of those maps, the vast majority of counties in this country do not have abortion access, especially if you're a woman who lives in the South or if you live in rural areas. It's very hard to get any kind of reproductive health care. And so this has been a way that abortion has still been accessible for millions of women in this country. The Fifth Circuit dealt a giant blow last week by saying that it's not legal to do this across state lines. I'm not a lawyer. I believe we have a commerce clause on the books, but apparently the Fifth Circuit felt otherwise. And this, if this law stands, will result in millions of women from every state in the country losing access to abortion. And I just want to note that this was the decisive issue in the 2022 midterms, abortion rights. Trump was able to make the sale for a lot of voters in 2024 by saying, hey, don't worry about it. You can still get abortion because there's telemedicine and it's still legal in half the states. Don't worry about it. Vote for me. I'm not going to touch it. Now conservative courts are going much further than the Dobbs decision. And I'm really interested to see how much of an issue this will be in the midterms this year.
I agree, and I think that the right is doing a very stealthy job of all of this. Like, this is like, oh well, you know, you can't get Mifepristone over the mail. I mean, it was a Biden rule, right? Who, you know, it's not that old, like it's not that big of a deal, but it is a slow erosion of all this. And I think I agree with you. It's a massive tectonic shift in our policy. But, you know, if anyone out there watches Unholy Ground with me and Andrew Watkins, we've been screaming about this for months. Almost every show we talk about, look, they are coming for all of it, for everything that you take to keep yourself from getting pregnant. They don't want you to not be pregnant. That is the whole thing. The EPA announced a new guideline where they're going to test water for hormones. Not testosterone, P.S. Only the hormones found in oral contraceptives taken by women, and also hormone replacement therapies taken by women. So they're coming after women very specifically.
Yes.
And that is the aim. The EPA is coming after your birth control. Think about that.
Why not? Right? Actually, we do seem to have some breaking news out of SCOTUS that they did temporarily restore the right to get Mifepristone by mail while this is being appealed, which is good news. However, given this court's track record on abortion rights and willing to cast away stare decisis on all sorts of issues, I don't think that any of us should consider this matter to be anywhere near settled. And I should note that this breaking news came to us via our next guest, Sawyer Hackett. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Sawyer, thank you so much for being here. If you are not reading him on Substack, you should. He is a former advisor to Secretary Castro and was an Obama appointee and is a Democratic strategist who opines on many of these issues and brings us breaking news as well. So thank you for being here.
Great to be with you.
So I know that last week you were watching the Voting Rights Act, like all of us. What does this mean for Democratic strategy? We've seen that Democrats have been fighting some fire with fire in Virginia and California by redoing their redistricting processes temporarily. But let's face it, this is all on war at this point, thanks to the Supreme Court. Do you think that Democrats have it in them to do this kind of hardball redistricting everywhere that they can?
I think they do, and it seems they're already indicating that that's the way that they're leaning. And you saw Hakeem Jeffries last week essentially saying that if Republicans go ahead and start nullifying Democrats' existence across these southern states, Democrats have no other option but to respond in kind, and that could look like zeroing out Republican representation in places like Colorado, in places like California, which could create a 52-0 map. And so I think Republicans are playing with fire right now, and Democrats are going to have to match fire with fire if Republicans head down this path. I mean, what this decision ultimately means is that there will be a severe lack in representation for voters of color, in the long run. In the short run, it may mean 1 to 4 seats potentially heading towards Republicans ahead of the midterms. But, Democrats, I think, have no option that if they go with this maximalist route of kind of, eliminating every Democratic seat in the South, I think you're going to have to look at some of these other states matching that fire, and it seems like they have the appetite, and I'm really glad to see it from Democratic leadership, because they have been very reluctant to embrace this fighting fire with fire strategy in places like Virginia. I mean, it was a tough pull to get them over the hump on that, and now that they've done it, I think that they're pretty glad that they did, and so I think it's it's more evidence that this is the kind of strategy that you have to embrace as you're fighting authoritarianism and this attempt to seize power even before votes are cast in a midterm election.
Democrats have been really hesitant to embrace court reforms, like talking about expanding the Supreme Court and trying to perhaps impose term limits and ethics reforms and all of the things that seem rather necessary given just how partisan the Supreme Court is, and a lot of their just absolutely sweeping decisions, from giving Trump immunity back in 2024 to the Voting Rights Act to Dobbs, and so on. Do you think that if Democrats are able to achieve a trifecta at some point soon, that we will see the Democrats will embrace court packing and some of these more extreme solutions?
I mean, I don't know that they really have any choice. I mean, we're looking at a situation where, Trump could potentially appoint another Supreme Court justice to replace some of the aging justices, conservative justices already on the court. If God forbid, one of those justices passes before the end of his 4-year term, he might have the option to appoint another one. And so you're looking at a stacked majority in which there could be two liberal members on the court. There is almost no democratic policy that can sustain that in that environment when anything can get lifted up to the Supreme Court. They can strike things down. They're putting things on this. They're ruling things down on this shadow docket. Democrats almost have no choice but to look at reforms to the court, and that could be anything from, establishing term limits all the way to expanding the size of the court. There's different ways to do some of those reforms. Some of them require constitutional amendments. Some of them might just require Congress passing laws. But I think they do have to embrace it. I would love to see some of those 2028 candidates really start to talk about the court in their runs for president. And I think, honestly, the appetite, as you've kind of alluded to, has been really grown. And I think one of the things you didn't mention there was like the huge ethical lapses over the last 4 or 5 years. I think during the Biden term, stuff around Justice Clarence Thomas accepting, financial compensation to put his kids through school and certain houses. And I mean, it's just crazy. And some of this stuff fades from the news, and I think voters tend to forget about it. I think it's incumbent on Democrats to keep this, center of the bullseye in election years. And also, I think with these rulings, you have, like the VRA ruling, if Mifepristone does get struck down at the Supreme Court, you're going to see another huge conversation about what we can be doing to reform this court. And I think that's only going to be growing the appetite for serious reform among voters as well, because these are extremely unpopular things that they're doing. And like it or not, the court can be an arbiter of the law, but at the end of the day, they also are responsive to public opinion, and they don't like to admit that, but they are. And public opinion has headed in the wrong direction for them for 10 years or more. So they really got to take a look at some of these reforms. And I think it will be interesting to see which Democrats kind of put this, out there in front of voters as they head to the, in campaign season in 2028.
I've been thinking about this. Speaking of the word reform, the mid-decade redistricting as a sort of shotgun reform, not in a good way, right? It is taking our system and reshaping it into a different system, sort of willy-nilly, without any sort of forethought for future or medium-term stuff. And we've seen people like even Pete Buttigieg now talking about electoral college reform and popular vote. Do you think that this mid-decade sort of craze, both in blue states and red states, will trigger some sort of, fundamental re-examination of our democracy and of how people are represented and how people vote? I mean, this seems like a really big project that we're doing without any forethought. It's like duct tape.
Yeah. No, I mean, I spent a good bit of time working in the 2020 cycle. I was a communications director for Secretary Castro's presidential campaign. And during that cycle, there was this vibrant conversation about democratic reforms that each candidate would endorse and get behind. I think across the board, everybody was pretty universal on, getting rid of the electoral college would be something that they would support. There was all kinds of just like, I don't want to say litmus tests, because they weren't, litmus tests as to whether you'd have the support of voters, but they were, here's where you stand. Here's where the Democrats stand on all these kind of democracy ethical reforms. And we were pretty in line with all of those reforms, but it didn't seem like any one candidate was really kind of leading with their chin to push this out there in front of voters and make the case that this is going to be a top priority for them once they get into office. I think, looking ahead to 2028, I don't know that that's like, I think now it's not theoretical, right? Like we know that these reforms are needed if we're going to come back from the brink of what has essentially been like a game of like chicken with Republicans, especially on gerrymandering and redistricting, but on any number of ethical reforms. I mean, the amount of like support there is for things like banning stock trading by members of Congress and by the president, regulating around this like crypto scams that Trump is running, the ethical considerations of having your son-in-law and your kids running your private business and making deals with countries that you're negotiating trade with. It's just
that's bad, right?
That's a bad. Yeah. Okay. There's a whole litany of things. Sure. Right. And I, for one, I've put a lot of thought into this. I, for one, am going to be really interested to see which 2028 candidates, similar to the, court reform issue, which 2028 candidates are going to be putting this out there as kind of, putting political stake behind it. Because to me, like, this is the most important thing. And all of those reforms, whether it's on the economy or on abortion or on immigration, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, whatever it is, which policy that you're leading with as a 2028 candidate, almost none of that can be achieved without, going back to the basics and putting some of these guardrails in form to protect democracy from being exploited like the way it has under this administration. So I really want to see a 2028 candidate kind of articulate a vision for America in which we can address all of these things, so we can actually start to address some of the issues that have overwhelmingly bipartisan support and have had for decades and decades, but can't get anything done because of gridlock in Washington, because of ethical things that are kind of pushing people away from making bipartisan deals or whatever it may be. So I think it is going to be a big issue heading into 2028. I'd like to see more candidates talk about it in 2026. But I do think the Democrats are really starting to kind of articulate those messages now.
Yeah, Sawyer, who are some of the candidates who are talking about that right now?
I think, you mentioned Pete. I think Pete's always been great on this. Obviously, he's extremely articulate and has the ability to kind of frame these things better than almost anybody. I think lately seeing, Senator John Ossoff has been really strong on this, kind of talking about it from the corruption angle. That's another key part of this. I think, his ability to connect affordability, which is obviously going to be kind of the main state issue that gets Democrats elected, with corruption and what the Trump administration, what Trump himself has been able to get away with, kind of being able to marry those 2 points in such an articulate way has been really fascinating to see. I think you're going to see a lot of candidates approach it in different ways. And, obviously no one's throwing their hat in there right now for running for 2028, but you're starting to see them articulate it on their own campaign trails. You're starting to see them put out videos, short form videos on social media about it. I really want to see more of it, but I like what I'm seeing so far from some of these potential 2028 candidates.
Who you got?
Oh, I don't have anybody. I'm way too far. Like they haven't even scratched the surface of what I need before I start considering support. I mean, like we have to demand so much more out of these people heading into 2028. Like this is the most important nominee we could ever possibly pick. And so like my criteria is going to be extremely high, and I don't imagine that I'm going to have any sort of decision on that until, we're a few months out away from primaries, honestly.
Yeah.
We had like over 20 candidates running in the 2020 cycle. Do you think that we'll be looking at that for 2028, that kind of a massive field?
It sure seems like it. I mean, there's a host of governors who are interested in running. There's obviously a bunch of senators who are interested in running. There's even a few members of the House who might throw their hat in. But I also think we have the potential here, in such a strange cycle after a major defeat in 2024, you have a few people in the private sector, in this kind of celeb world, looking at running. I think it's going to be a very interesting cycle. I don't know if it's going to be as many candidates as 2020, but I think it should be it's a similar environment in which Democrats feel like they have a strong opportunity to win. The whole kind of country right now at this point, obviously we're still pretty far away, is really turning against Trump and Republicans. We're looking at a midterm cycle that Democrats could wipe Republicans off the map in a whole bunch of different places. So you have to imagine that there's a bunch of 2028 potential candidates looking at this and saying, if I'm going to run for president, and a lot of these guys obviously do want to run for president, this is probably the cycle to do it. And even if you don't think that you're going to win, running in a field of 25 candidates, if you don't make it all the way to the Iowa caucus, isn't the most embarrassing thing in the world. There's plenty of candidates who didn't make it to the Iowa caucus in 2020 who are still, sitting in the U.S. Senate today. So plenty of options.
I'm curious about, this cycle midterm, November to 28. It does seem like we're headed for a, potential blue wave. I'm knocking on wood, obviously. But once Democrats take the House, let's hope, and there's a fleeting chance that they can do some damage in the Senate as well, they have to actually lead. What are some of the things that they need to do between 26 and 28 to put them in a good position to take the presidency?
Yeah, today marks 6 months from the midterms, which is shocking.
Oh my God.
Like isn't that insane? Like 6 months from today, the midterms, and it's also 6 months. We're 6 months post the first off-year election. So those elections in Virginia and New Jersey, those were 6 months ago, and in that period of time, Trump has focused on Venezuela. There was the kind of Minnesota, the ICE raid situation, and then, Iran. It's like three really kind of like negative, I think, storylines that have really driven Trump's numbers down into the ground. I can't imagine that the next 6 months are going to be kind of this like concerted focus on affordability and the issues that voters care about heading into the midterms. It's going to be a stream of consciousness from Trump,
Yes.
That it's just dominating the news once again. I don't see how they can turn that around. I mean, he's sitting at a, anywhere between a 32 and 35% approval rating. This weekend, the Washington Post had a poll out, had the highest 62% disapproval, the highest disapproval rating he's ever had in office. He's underwater on the economy and in immigration and inflation and wars, and it's just across the board terrible. Democrats, I think, have an incredible opportunity not just to take the House. I think that they will take the Senate. We have an opportunity to compete in places like Iowa, in places like Texas, in places like North Carolina. I mean, like we really do have a chance to not just like take the House and Senate, but take it by a few seats and really be able to deliver some massive changes. My thing for Democrats is I don't necessarily think that they need a contract with America, but I would love to see Democrats leadership in the House and Senate be able to spell out exactly the things that we're going to be able to achieve with a Democratic majority, even with Trump in the White House. Here are the things that we know that we can lead on accountability measures. That's very important. I think that's what voters want most, is a check on how like the horrible toxic agenda that Trump is putting out on a daily basis. Accountability, for the people who have broken the law too. And then the flip side of that is like, what can we be working with Republicans to pass? What are the things that we actually do have consensus on? We could ban stock trading among members of Congress. We could, put regulations around crypto. We could, scale back the war in Iran and the president's ability to like operationalize troops around the globe at a moment's notice. I mean, like, there's a number of things that I think a Democratic majority can say right now. This is what we're going to achieve. This is what we will work with Republicans. These are the accountability measures that we want to run, and they should spell that out clearly in writing for voters, so that they know what they're voting. Because I think people do have a sense of like, well, is gridlock is that really what we want? Do we want a party opposite the president in Congress that can get even less done than they are right now? You have to be able to spell out, okay, we can get things done. We can make progress on the issues that you care about. Here are those issues. And by the way, we're going to hold this guy and his administration accountable for breaking the law and everything else.
Let's talk a little bit about the war with Iran, which has been quite the albatross for Trump. I know that some of Trump's advisors made the rounds on the Sunday shows. I think we have a clip where we were trying to get some clarification if we're even at war right now, which seemed to be a point of debate.
So you said the blockade is still on. A blockade is an act of war. Are we at war with Iran?
Iran shut down the straits.
Right.
And the only ones they were letting through were Iranian ships, and President Trump didn't think that was acceptable.
So we are still at war with Iran.
I don't know what the definition of war is when we're not shooting and we're negotiating and they're under a lot of pressure. There's no reason, I think, right now to do anything other than what we're doing.
I don't know the definition of war, but I wonder, it's reassuring. I have a question about this, because you've talked about, affordability and all of this kind of thing. And look, voters' number one priority is almost never international policy or politics, right? Or global security even. But somehow, because of the cost of this war and the sort of quagmire that we're in and the disaster of it, Trump has been able to tie the war to kitchen table issues. It has become an issue of affordability, because we're spending money on that, but we can't afford insurance and so on and so forth. Seems to be doing that with every issue. Are Democrats tying those things together enough?
I would like to see more. I mean, and that, Kevin Hassett is Trump's top economic advisor. I mean, that's the guy that you want out there, like leading your economic message. Like, how, is this a war? He can't even define like what's going on. Gas over the weekend hit $4.45 a gallon. It's likely to hit $4.50 at some point this week. It's going to be above $5 a gallon within the next couple of few weeks. It probably could hit $6 a gallon as soon as this summer. I mean, that is not a situation that's sustainable for Trump and Republicans, and they're desperate and flailing. And it's clear that voters can see this too, because he keeps trying to throw things out there. We're going to escort ships through the strait. No, you're not. You can, we're going to send troops in to open things up. No, you're not. Like you don't have, he's constantly threatening, constantly, blustering about what he's going to do to Iran. First, it was, we're going to bring you back to we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Age. Then we're going to wipe out your civilization. Last week, it was, they better make a deal. They better get smart soon and make a deal, or I'm going to get mad. I mean, like, he's all over the place. He clearly doesn't have a strategy to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which it's not the Straits, it's the Strait of Hormuz, which was open before this war started, has been shut down since, and has caused a massive shock in oil supply, but also it's causing prices to go up across the board. I mean, we're likely to see a 10% increase in food prices over the summer as a result of the Strait being closed, as a result of oil prices. People don't know that all of these things are connected. And so I think I would like to see Democrats be a lot more aggressive in talking about this war. I mean, there is no reason that we shouldn't be on offense 24/7 on this thing. It is a disaster. It's like the polling around this shows that Trump's approval rating is at 33% with this war in Iran, and 66% oppose it. Those numbers were a lot different just a few weeks ago. So he continues to nosedive. And this is an issue that, you're right, like, Americans don't usually have strong sentiments when it comes to American foreign policy or conflicts abroad. It's like, I can't really wrap my head around, does this war make sense? Is it operationally going well? Like, they're not experts on these things, but they are experts at driving down the street and seeing that their local gas station has, prices have gone up 45 cents in the last 2 months, and they're pissed about it, and they know that Trump is to blame. It, like, with almost everything he's doing right now, you can pinpoint the blame 100% back to Trump. It has nothing to do with Biden. It has nothing to do with people abroad. It's his choices, his actions, and they're paying the price for it. And so, until he opens those straits up, until gas prices start coming down, it's gonna be the albatross that hangs around his neck, and I think it's going to redound to Democrats taking the Senate too.
We had another Trump official, Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, also made the rounds on the Sunday shows. This time, he had a very interesting take on what you need your ID for in America. Which
there's a lot of things that we can be doing, like voter ID. Like, every time you walk into a restaurant or a club, you have to show your ID. How about you have to show your ID to vote? That's not anything that's crazy, and that's what we should be talking about.
Certainly one of the votes on Capitol Hill right now.
I was absolutely shocked that there was no pushback on that. But Sawyer, as somebody who does communications, is it difficult to message against a party that constantly lies?
Oh, it's extremely difficult to message against a party that lies. I think in this instance, talking about those kinds of comments like those, it's a lot easier to just go with ridicule. I mean, that's just an absurd statement, right? Like, the idea that you would have to show an ID to go, sit down at your local Outback. Like, these guys are clearly not eating at normal restaurants. They're eating at country clubs, or they're eating at like private dining supper clubs where maybe they have to show their ID because they have to prove their membership. They don't understand anything about the average American experience of going and sitting down at a restaurant. So when they do make comments like these, they inevitably just step on a giant rake and make themselves look like fools. I think that the constant barrage of lies has been, I think, something that has been hard to keep up with. This muzzle velocity of Steve Bannon just throwing crap at the walls, two or three major stories a day that Democrats have to contend with and fight back with. Is everything a distraction, or is it something we have to message back on immediately? Is the Epstein story a distraction from the Iran war, which is a distraction from some? I mean, we're constantly just playing this game of like drinking from a fire hose, and so I think Democrats all have their roles to play, and Democrats in Congress are going to respond to certain stories. Democrats like me, who are content creators, are going to respond to certain stories. And so, when it comes to things like that, I think ridicule is probably the best way to go, and content creators can fit the bill for that. When it comes to, making the case against Trump on this war in Iran, I think you want your experts and your Middle East experts on the Hill kind of taking him on. But everyone has a role to play. We shouldn't let any pitch go by. Every flub, every gaffe, every horrible policy is an opportunity to contrast with them Not having a standard bearer of the party right now makes it difficult to kind of speak in one voice. But there's plenty of Democrats out there who are good messengers, who are compelling messengers, who are out there in their own platforms, pushing back against this administration. I think, it's all hands on deck.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just, the affordability thing and international politics. He's tying corruption to affordability. He's tying democracy, like democratic reforms. If you aren't able to vote, then you can't afford this because you can't vote them. He is doing all of the work for us, and I feel like we really need to help him.
Yeah, for some reason we ascribe so much strategy to what these guys are doing, and we talk about them as if they're playing 3D chess. They are a gaggle of morons who don't actually know how any of these issues impact Americans on a real basis, on their day-to-day experience. And so I think it's really important that we don't overthink our opposition to Trump. It's just opposition. Most people view him as an idiot. And so being able to contrast that shouldn't be that difficult for Democrats. But the problem is there's just so much coming at us that it's hard to kind of pick your fight. And I think sometimes Democrats, in the kind of consultant class, they tend to kind of revert back to, well, let's pick and choose the 1 or 2 or 3 issues that have to do with your direct pocketbook and find a compelling message test that works perfectly, that here's Democrats' message. No, just fight on every piece of ground possible. And when they hand you a clip or a soundbite, push it out there and mock them, ridicule them, contrast with them, whatever it is that you think is the appropriate way to respond. But it's just a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
It is. And that's great advice, Sawyer. What is the best way that people can find your work on social media, on Substack?
Yeah, I'm primarily do vertical videos these days. So it's Substack is a great place to find me because you can actually support my work there at Substack. But I'm across all the platforms, Instagram at Sawyer Hackett, same thing, TikTok, Sawyer_Hackett. So I have a pretty unique name, so it shouldn't be very hard to find me, but I'm on all the platforms.
Great. Well, I appreciate you stopping by and talking with us today.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Love to have you back.
Yeah.
Well, we have a great week. I know we tell you that every week, but I mean,
this week's a terrible week.
We work hard so that we don't have terrible weeks. The terrible news keeps coming, but
that's true.
We try and make sure that at least our programming is a notch above terrible. That's our promise to you.
Maybe more than a notch, maybe several notches above terrible. We have really good content. And by the way, Sawyer is amazing. I want to have that guy back a lot.
Yeah. It's great to hear just how simple the message can be for Democrats, because I do think it's overwhelming. And sometimes people are like, no, you have to poll test this. And it's just no, this guy sucks. Just keep hitting him because everything he's doing sucks.
Yes, that's what, that when the mayor of Minneapolis was like, get the fuck out of Minneapolis to ICE. It's why it resonated so deeply. It's because finally somebody just didn't need to poll test or put that to a committee or have their comms guy say yes or no. He was just so mad. And we're all so mad. Right. Just be mad. Yeah.
Well, coming up this afternoon, we will have Stuart Stevens with Simon Rosenberg, and they will be on hand to talk strategy. I'm sure they'll be talking about the latest court cases, the Iran war. Always such a good discussion between them.
So good.
It's always fun to see Simon, who's a veteran of Democratic politics, and Stuart, of course, has done his mea culpa for building up the Republican Party for years. But as two people who are veteran strategists, it's great to see how they approach the issues and what they think the biggest stories are coming out will be.
Yeah, and it always feels like you're sort of peeking in on a secret conversation with people who they just have all the receipts. They've been in all the rooms. They know how all of this stuff works. It really feels like the sort of highest level gossip sesh.
Yeah.
It's so fun. I love those conversations.
Absolutely. On Wednesday, on my show, First Draft, I will have media critic Jennifer Schulze on. She writes the Substack Indistinct Chatter. She was a longtime TV executive in Chicago, and we will have lots of media stories to talk about. The aftermath of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, of course, and just how the press is responding to Trump. Now that we're over a year into his presidency, are they holding him accountable? What can they do better? I can't really think of anyone better to have that discussion with.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. Your media discussions, by the way, are always great. And I think it's so important for an outlet like us or a group like us to take another big look at how media operates, especially in this world where media is changing so rapidly.
Yeah. And look, anyone can be a critic. We get it. We're all on social media. That's what we do. But Jennifer and I have spent decades actually within the mainstream media. And so I think you come at it from a different perspective because you can see the positives, but you can also see an industry that is still struggling with how to cover an authoritarian president. And it's an important discussion for us to have about what they're getting right, what they're getting wrong, and what we're doing on the independent media side to hold Trump accountable, because we don't have to worry about our billionaire corporate owners that want to have some merger approved by the Trump administration. We can just tell you the facts and tell you the truth. And that is something that we desperately need in these times.
Yeah, it's right. That's right. Yeah. We're really, believe it or not, very mission driven.
Absolutely. And that's why, if you like what you see on Lincoln Square, please subscribe. You can subscribe for free. If you can support our work, we appreciate that. You keep us going. But we want you to be part of this, whether you are a paid subscriber or not. So to make sure that you never miss any of these great shows, go ahead, smash that subscribe button. We appreciate it. And I think the last show I just want to highlight today is one of our newest ones. It's History of the Present with Brian Datesman. He's the editor-in-chief of The Intellectualist, longtime friend of Lincoln Square. And he has a really fascinating show where he talks with so many people from the world of politics and international relations and the arts. And really, I think it's one of our most unique shows because you never know what the questions are going to be. You never know what direction the conversation is going to take. And this week, director Michael Mann will be on. So, that's a conversation. Where are you going to see that?
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Brian, oh, man, that show is just endlessly fascinating. We're doing that in collaboration with The Intellectualist, and it's just so happy to see him succeed.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to be able to have these longer form conversations instead of just, what you get on cable news, which is, 5 minutes with someone. And, then you're like, oh, I would have loved to have heard from this person on like 10 other different things.
Yeah.
And so we love being able to bring you those deep dives with some really unique guests like Michael Mann.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. Great. Well, Sam, this week, our weekly assignments, our call to action involves the guy that Trump wants to replace Jerome Powell as Fed chair. If you're familiar with the Epstein files, you may have come across his name. His name is Kevin Warsh, and like so many people in the Trump administration, he has popped up in these documents. He has a very unique perspective on what it would mean to be independent as the Fed chair, as in he gave really no reassurances when he was before a Senate committee last week. Donald Trump, of course, has gone after the current Fed chair, Jerome Powell, That was laughed out of court, but Jeanine Pirro, one of his U.S. attorneys, has, let's say, expressed interest in perhaps bringing those charges back, like for so many of Trump's political enemies. But this is a really important position, right, Sam? I mean, interest rates right now are still about 6.5%. I seem to remember Trump was supposed to take care of that, along with food prices, gas prices, and inflation. Maybe at some point he'll get around to it. But, if the Fed chair gets confirmed by this Republican Senate, that's a really big feather in Donald Trump's cap, that he has a Fed chair who will not be independent anymore. So we've got the number for the Capitol switchboard right here. Contact your senator, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, because the Fed's independence is incredibly important. Look at what Donald Trump has done to the economy. Do you want him in charge of the Fed too?
I think that's, look, this is the thing. We are all pretty certain of Donald Trump's policy and political failure, right? And, it's hard to cheer on that kind of failure because it does impact us and it affects us. And there's a part of us, I'm sure, that is like, well, sure, have your way, you'll bring down the economy, but that's shooting yourself in the foot. We need actually our country to succeed, right? We need leaders and leadership that is steering us in the right way. We can't cheer failure, even if it's from Donald Trump. We have to stop him from his own, look, Congress isn't doing it right now. We have to do it. Stop him from his own worst impulses. Call your senator, call your rep.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that anyone wants a Fed chair that will say, sure, whenever the president gives me a call, I'll just cut interest rates or I will do his bidding, regardless of what the economic fundamentals tell me to do. That's not that is not what we want. Look, we've seen what it's been like to have Trump appoint an attorney general like Pam Bondi, who functioned as his lawyer, not as the United States' lawyer. We don't want that. Or the person who has such an impact on our economy, especially at this critical time when Donald Trump has done so much to damage our economy.
Yep.
Yep.
That's it.
So go ahead, give your senator a call. It's not too late to stop this nomination. There are a number of Republicans that have expressed some concerns. Make them make good on those concerns.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Sam, it's been another great show, and I appreciate all of you joining us on this Monday morning. So thank you.
And have a great week. Do your part. Get together. Be positive. Let's do this.